Manila is burning with anger. More than 200 protesters arrested, over 130 police officers injured, schools closed, and curfews imposed. This is not just another protest. It's a nation on edge, exploding over a corruption scandal that could shake the very foundations of the Philippines. The Philippine capital, Manila, has turned into the center of chaos and outrage. What began as peaceful demonstrations against corruption has now escalated into violent clashes, mass arrests, and a city gripped by fear and defiance. More than 200 people have been arrested, many of them young activists and even minors. Police officers in full riot gear clashed with masked demonstrators, leaving at least 131 officers wounded, with some injuries described as very serious. Streets once buzzing with ordinary life are now filled with tear gas, burning motorcycles, and the cries of a people demanding justice. This uprising stems from deep anger over fraudulent government-funded flood control projects, a scandal that exposed the rot of corruption eating away at the nation. These projects, meant to protect lives and livelihoods from the floods that regularly devastate the country, were instead used as cash cows for corrupt officials. Millions in taxpayer money was diverted into the pockets of politicians and contractors, while vulnerable communities were left defenseless against rising waters. For ordinary Filipinos, this was the last straw. Year after year, they endure typhoons, floods, and destruction. Year after year, their leaders promise better protection. And year after year, those promises are broken, while the powerful enrich themselves. This scandal didn't just steal money. It stole safety, dignity, and trust. The protests that erupted in Manila were fueled by decades of frustration. Filipinos are no strangers to corruption. From the Marcos era's billions in stolen wealth to more recent scandals, the cycle has been painfully familiar. Stolen funds, empty investigations, and little accountability. But this time, the outrage has reached a boiling point. Tens of thousands took to the streets. Student groups, labor unions, and women's rights organizations like Gabriela United, chanting, "Ibagsak," bring them down. Their anger wasn't just about one project. It was about an entire system that has failed them. But the demonstrations quickly escalated. Police say that protesters, some masked, began throwing stones and assaulting officers. Motorcycles were set on fire, businesses vandalized, and chaos spread. Authorities responded with force, arresting 224 people, including minors. Schools have now been closed, and a curfew for young people has been imposed. Manila is on lockdown, with a heavier police presence than usual patrolling the streets. This raises an urgent question. How did the Philippines reach this explosive point? The answer lies in years of frustration, distrust, and anger at a government that has repeatedly failed to serve its people. The flood control scandal was not just financial corruption, it was a betrayal of the people's survival. And betrayal, when repeated for generations, eventually sparks rebellion. Experts say this is a pivotal moment. If the government continues to rely on force and intimidation, the protests could spiral further out of control. Already, clashes have become violent, with hundreds injured and arrested. The longer people feel unheard, the more explosive the situation could become. For many, this feels like a historic turning point. The Philippines has a proud tradition of mass protest movements shaping its destiny. The 1986 People Power Revolution toppled a dictator. Subsequent uprisings forced leaders out of office. Today, the streets of Manila once again feel like the stage for history in the making. But will this be another revolution, or just another chapter in the cycle of anger and silence? That depends on what happens next. The government insists it is investigating the corruption scandal. Statements have been made, committees formed, promises announced. But Filipinos have heard this all before. Each time, the story is the same. Outrage, promises, investigations that drag on, and finally, silence. The corrupt remain free, the stolen money remains gone, and the people are left to suffer. This time, however, The people are not willing to let the scandal fade away. They are demanding real consequences, jail time for officials, full recovery of stolen funds, genuine reforms to ensure transparency. And the question of leadership is now under scrutiny. Can current leaders survive this storm? Or will public pressure grow so strong that resignations, or even bigger political shifts, become inevitable? The international community is watching closely. The Philippines has long struggled with corruption, and scandals like this undermine confidence in governance. Investors hesitate, aid partners question accountability, and global observers wonder if the Philippines can truly rise as a strong player in Southeast Asia while corruption remains so rampant. But for Filipinos, this isn't about global image. It's about survival. It's about waking up each morning wondering if the next typhoon will wash away their homes because flood projects were sabotaged by greed. It's about knowing that their taxes fund luxuries for politicians instead of protection for citizens. The scale of arrests and injuries shows just how tense the situation has become. 224 people behind bars, over 130 police officers wounded. The government is trying to paint the protesters as violent mobs, but many argue that the violence is the inevitable result of years of repression and neglect. When people are pushed to the edge, when their voices are silenced, they erupt. What's striking is the age of many protesters. Youth groups are at the forefront, refusing to accept the same cycles their parents endured. For them, this is about reclaiming their future. They don't want to grow up in a country where corruption is normal. Their courage to face arrest, tear gas, and batons speaks to a new generation unwilling to stay silent. But the road ahead is dangerous. Manila is unpredictable right now. More protests are expected, and with schools closed and curfews in place, the atmosphere feels like a city under siege. Journalists report that while some sense of normalcy has returned in parts of the capital, a heavy police presence looms over daily life. The government is tightening control, but the people are growing bolder. The risk is clear. Continued violence could destabilize not just Manila, but the entire nation. Each clash deepens distrust, each arrest fuels more anger, and each injury becomes another reason to fight back. So where does this leave the Philippines? At a crossroads. On one path, the government could listen, truly listen, to the demands of the people. That means accountability, transparency, and reform. It means treating corruption not as a political inconvenience, but as a national emergency. On the other path, the government could double down on repression. More arrests, more force, more attempts to silence dissent. But history shows that repression only delays the inevitable. The people of the Philippines have toppled dictators before. They have risen again and again, and they can rise once more. For now, Manila is tense, the nation is watching, and the world is waiting. What happens in the next days and weeks could shape the future of the Philippines for years to come. One thing is certain, the people are no longer afraid. Their voices are loud, their anger is raw, and their determination is unshakable. Whether through peaceful protest or chaotic clashes, they are demanding a Philippines that belongs to the people, not to corrupt politicians. The arrests, the clashes, the curfews, these are not signs of weakness. They are signs of a nation in motion, a people refusing to be ignored. From the chants of Ibagsak to the defiant march of students and workers, the protests in Manila are more than anger. They are a declaration that corruption will no longer be tolerated. The Philippines stands on the edge of change. The question is not whether the people will fight for justice. They already are. The question is whether their leaders will listen, or whether they will once again force the nation into another cycle of betrayal and rebellion. Because if history has taught us anything, it is this. When Filipinos rise, nothing can stop them. The coming days will be critical. With over 200 protesters already behind bars and a city weighed down by fear and anger, the Philippines faces a test of its democracy. The government can either choose dialogue, accountability, and reform, or continue down the path of force and repression. One leads to healing and progress, the other leads to deeper division and instability. But if history is any guide, the people will not back down. Every clash, every arrest, every curfew only sharpens their resolve. The young are stepping into the streets, the marginalized are raising their voices, and ordinary Filipinos are finding strength in unity. This movement is not just about corruption scandals or flood control projects. It's about reclaiming dignity, demanding respect, and rewriting the social contract between the governed and those in power. The Philippines now stands at a turning point. The protests of today could ignite the reforms of tomorrow. They could awaken a new generation to believe in their power to demand change. And if leaders fail to respond, they risk being swept away by the very people they sought to silence. Because the truth is undeniable. The people will always be stronger than corruption,